Good morning. And may I, on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, welcome the officials from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, the Ministry of Education, the Youth Training and Employment Partnership Program Limited, members of the media and the public. My name is Wade Mark, and I'm the chairman of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. May I advise that this meeting is being held in public and is being broadcast live on the Parliament Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can send their comments related to today's topic via email parl101@ttparliament.org, facebook.com/ttparliament, and Twitter @ttparliament. The purpose of this meeting of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to examine the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of the Youth Training and Employment Partnership Program for the period 2008 to 2014. The committee is desirous of hearing the challenges being faced by the key stakeholders at the YTEPP in an attempt to determine some of the possible solutions to these challenges. The role of our committee is to help the YTEPP improve its delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. At this time, I'd like to invite my colleagues to introduce themselves before we turn to officials from the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Education, and the YTEPP team present here today. So may I invite, starting on my extreme right, the member to introduce himself, and then we'll proceed.
Fitzgerald Hines, member.
Good morning. My name is David Small. I'm a member of this committee.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jennifer Baptiste Primus, and I'm a member of this committee.
Good morning. Nian Gatsvidoli, member.
May I invite the member?
Good morning, everyone. I am Chintamani Suku, Acting Director, Social and Economic Transformation in Investments Division.
Good morning. I am Nisa German, Ministry of Finance, Central Audit, Senior Audit Analyst.
Good morning. I'm Annabella Sao, Business Analyst, Investment Division.
Thank you. Ministry of Education. At this time, the Ministry of Education.
Pleasant good morning. I am Leno Baptiste Simmons, Acting Permanent Secretary, the Ministry of Education.
Good morning. Kurt Meyer, Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Education.
Good morning to all. My name is Carol Bikram. I'm Acting Director, Research Planning and Technical Services.
Good morning, everyone. I am Vidya Hiraman, Director of Finance and Accounts Division.
Good morning. Avril Rahim, Director, Legal Services, Ministry of Education.
Anybody else from education? Then we go on to YTEPP, the team from YTEPP, starting with the chairman.
Good morning. I'm Thora Best, Chairman of the Board, YTEPP Limited.
Good morning. My name is Jesse Morse, Deputy Chairman.
Yes.
Good morning. I am Nigel Forgini, Chief Executive Officer of YTEPP Limited.
Good morning. I am Jerome Grant, Director of Finance and IT at YTEPP Limited.
Good morning. I am Carolyn Gludo, Director of Youth Training.
Good morning. I am Donna Schoon-Moses, the Director of Retraining.
Good morning, Melissa Pulchan, Board Member.
Good morning, Eric Taylor, Board Member.
Good morning, everyone. I am Nicole Thompson, the Finance Manager at YTEPP.
Good morning. I'm Chris O'Keefe, Director, Entrepreneurial Development and Support Services, YTEPP Limited.
Good morning. I'm Leonard Nimblet, Manager, Internal Audit.
Pleasant good morning, everyone. Arthur Billy Jackman, Manager, Research, YTEPP Limited.
All right. Thank you and welcome once again to the entire team here at this hearing to address the financials of this very important entity for the period 2008 to 2014. May I, on behalf of this committee, invite the chairman of YTEPP to make a brief opening statement. Madam?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to everyone. I thank you on behalf of this 6-month-old board and the members, management, and staff of YTEPP for the opportunity to give an account of our stewardship to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Created over 30 years ago in response to the growing problem of unemployable and unemployed youth aged 16 to 35 years, YTEPP now has the responsibility to provide vocational training throughout Trinidad and Tobago to persons 15 to 60 years of age. This skill training is augmented by micro-entrepreneurship training and a career enhancement. We at YTEPP believe that education and training are powerful tools necessary to alleviate poverty, improve one's quality of life, and help achieve sustainable development. It is against this backdrop that we have themed our 30th anniversary celebrations and recently concluded Stakeholders Forum, Sustainable Skills Development, Pathways for Future Business, and Community Success. Our partnership with Metalex Engineering Limited, Hydrotech, and Caribbean Dockyard and Engineering Services Limited have positively impacted the workforce of each of these industries and increased their level of productivity. We have made significant strides within the targeted communities by creating enabling environments for success and entrepreneurship. Such communities include Mayaro, Maruga, Barrackpore, Enterprise, and Laventil. Our overall aim is to develop our nation's human capital to a level where our workers are resilient, multi-skilled, and agile. This ability will help them to remain positive and strong in difficult times and adapt readily to changing situations. Our long-term objectives include to produce individuals who could easily find employment because they possess a wide range of up-to-date skills, to cooperate and collaborate with industries and employers to ensure the relevance of our training by addressing training gaps identified by industry, improving our monitoring and evaluation capacity. Our core values include excellence, customer service, teamwork, ethical conduct, and innovation and entrepreneurship. I look forward to today's hearing as after this exercise, YTEPP can only improve its performance. I thank you.
Yes, thank you so very much, Madam Chair. Before I ask the Permanent Secretary to make a few opening remarks, may I inquire of the Chief Executive Officer? Could you share with this committee how long the executive management team has been in place at YTEPP?
This executive management team has been in place for more than 12 years. The composition of this particular team.
May I now invite the acting permanent secretary to bring a few opening remarks at this time.
Thank you, Chairman, and good day to members of the Joint Select Committee. By way of background, I would say that YTEPP is an initiative which was launched in 1988 with the goal of supporting human capital development through market-driven technical education and employability skills training to citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. It was incorporated as a limited liability company under the Companies Act in 1990. The company provides training opportunities for the unemployed, the underemployed, retrenched workers, and displaced and incarcerated persons between the ages of 15 and 50 years. It offers a wide array of courses ranging from agriculture to media arts to the creative industries, construction, and manufacturing. The company has a number of centers throughout Trinidad and Tobago and trains on average 7,000 persons annually. With those few words, Chairman, I will stop here to allow your committee to take the lead on the discussion. My team and I will be happy to answer any questions.
I'll now invite the Honorable Fitzgerald Hines to raise a few questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chairman. How long have you been in post? 5 months. It is trite that the board has to take responsibility for the company and the management of the company, oversee the management of the company. That's trite. You accept that?
Yes, sir.
We have, well, it's interesting to note that the management executive team has been in place for 12 years. It means, therefore, that the persons who must answer some searching questions today are here with us.
Yes, they are, sir.
Let me begin by observing, based on an internal audit report, well, let me start off with a compliment. I have noticed, let me start off with a sincere compliment. Very uncharacteristically in Trinidad and Tobago, I might say, I have noticed that you had a Valencia project construction. You remember that, Mr. CEO?
Yes, sir.
And that, from the report in front of us, was completed in July of 2010. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
And the initial estimated cost was $1.5 million. Yes?
Yes.
And I see you managed to complete that project in July of 2010 at $1.497 million.
Correct.
That is, by Trinidad and Tobago standards, commendable. However, and you had the Woodford Lodge construction as well.
Yes, sir.
We have noticed from the August 2017 audit report, Appendix 9 to the documents you sent us, that right after the completion of that facility, as you were moving in, you had the very simple task of transposing equipment and stock from the old place to the new place.
Yes.
And I saw that the company stumbled horribly upon that, based on the report of the internal audit. At page 14 in particular, At page 14 of that internal audit report, well, page 15 for precision,
Yes.
a lot went wrong with the disposal of the items that came from one location into the new. Have you observed that?
Yes, we have.
And the internal auditor expressed grave concerns about how it was done. Just to put it in a nutshell for those who are listening and for which I seek a response, the internal auditor has found that the procedures that you all embarked on seem to have been manipulated, twisted, circumvented in order to favor staff getting access to equipment not having followed the proper procedure for disposal of state property. That is effectively what this is saying. You read it?
I read it, but I disagree, sir.
Tell us why you disagree.
Because I don't think that that is what the report would have indicated.
Let me quote for you an element or two of it. Huh? Yes, on page 15.
But his reports were done.
Just from about the second paragraph, the internal auditor is saying, the finding is a statement of fact dealing with something above. The untimely satisfaction of requests for documents concerning the donation, meaning donation of items to staff members, yeah, was the direct result of the piecemeal manner in which those requests were met. Requests for neither documents concerning the date of the donation nor activity thereafter were satisfied fully within the time frames cited by the warehouse management. It goes on to say the request for authorization was premised on the partly false and unsupported claim the items for disposal remained after previous sale efforts. The procedure requested a genuine attempt at sale and thereafter offers for sale to members of staff. You with me?
Yes, sir.
These are the findings of the internal auditor. He goes on to say, disposal, he or she, disposal forms for personal care items were created after the last announced sale, contrary to the claim made in the memo. The personal care items were subsequently withheld from the donation because they were expired, yet were not added to the list of items to be destroyed or disposed of. All of that and more suggests to me that there was clear manipulation of clearly defined and well-established procedures for disposing of state property that were flouted in order to benefit individual members of staff. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I can only say that as far as we were aware, or as far as I am aware, the process by which the organization disposes of its assets, and usually it's in terms of things that have become, in some instances, obsolete, is that we have in the past offered it for public sale, and in instances when it was not able to be removed through that methodology, we offered it to staff for sale. In terms of the manipulation, I cannot, I don't have evidence of that.
The internal auditor found evidence of that. That's not my job. That's not your job. I'm putting to you what the internal auditor is reporting to this parliament that it found. And from the records in front of us, having so identified that to you, you have done nothing about it. Let us proceed to something else while you search your mind for some kind of logical answer to that. I have noticed as well from the documentation in front of us that you have someone within your bosom identified as a special user. You're familiar with that term?
Not in this context.
Okay, I understand from the reading of the, where is it exactly? I just want to read it. Super user, sorry. You've heard that?
That's with ACH system.
ACH? Yes.
Yes, good. I must tell you, I would like to know, I have noticed from my reading, from our reading of these documents, that we found something we had never seen before at the level of this committee, and certainly not me as a parliamentarian. We found that that super user, thank you very much. We found that that super user Let me just take you from the top. Yes. The audit found that a high rate of unresolved, incomplete online payroll payments is suggestive of weakness in procedures and practices geared at settling them. The audit found as well that the super user or administrator for the platform through which direct debits are made from the company bank accounts for payroll purposes, and I'm now quoting, without the intervention of anyone else, can take a transaction of up to $10 million per day from start to finish. I'll tell you what, based on my general knowledge and anecdotal understanding of things, not even the Prime Minister of this country, not even the President, not even the Speaker, not the Chief Justice, the four highest office holders in this country, has that authority without reference to anyone else. Could you tell this committee the source of that authority, please, in precise and pristine terms? And who is this super user?
The initial problem arose when YTEPP was given responsibility for the processing of OJT stipends. The processing of OJT stipends took the monthly expenditure levels or release levels up to, in some instances, over $5 million. We had not adjusted our system at the time to recognize, as it were, the new approval limits. When it was brought to our attention by the internal auditor, we treated the matter with the board, and that was regularized. The super user in that instance was the director of finance.
What was the authority for that? Where did that power emanate from? That's what I would like to know as a member of this committee. Where did that power, what is the source of it? Was it from God? Where did it come from?
That was how... Mr. Chairman, when the online banking system was set up by First Citizens Bank, that was how the system was set up. And when the authority issue was highlighted by the internal auditor, it was addressed by the organization, and that power was revoked.
Could you indicate to this committee when this matter was highlighted by the internal auditor, and could you also indicate to us what time frame was allowed for the super user to use that methodology in order to address, as the CEO said, this new assignment that was given to the organization dealing with the payment of OJT stipend? What was the time frame the super user had before the internal auditor was able to indicate, look, you cannot continue along that line, and that power that was given to the super user was therefore revoked? Could you share with this committee?
I believe that The audit finding indicated that that was so in 2015, and within a couple of days of that finding, the matter was addressed with First Citizens Bank.
2015?
2015, yeah, 2015.
No, there's no 2015.
How long?
Sorry.
No, that's 2015.
2008, sorry.
2008.
2008.
So it was between 2008 to 2015?
No. 2008 and 2009, within that period.
Yeah, but when did the internal auditor, discovered this particular deficiency and highlighted that there was no authority for this, and you immediately revoked that? That was between the period 2008 and 2009.
That is correct.
And they're from late 2000. Could you indicate specifically the periods? So we can say from January of 2008, it started, and it ended in February, March, April, whichever month in December of 2009. So we will know the time frame that that person was able to exercise that power.
We don't have an exact date because the audit information here does not give an
Could you
exact date.
provide that to this committee in writing?
Yes, sir.
So we will know exactly what that date. And this immediately brings the point that I wanted to highlight to the fore. Do you have a fraud policy?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
You do? Where did you send a copy of that policy?
Yes, it was.
To us?
Yes, sir, a copy was sent.
We did request, but we didn't have sight of it. Would you be kind enough to provide us with that particular document, sir?
Yes, certainly.
Now, I would tell you something. On the documents that you submitted to this committee, we did ask clearly, does YTEPP have an internal fraud policy? I don't know if it was a slip. I don't know, meaning that at the material time, when you submitted your response, it may have slipped you, because I don't think you would seek to deliberately mislead this committee. But I can tell you from the information that you supply, Mr. CEO, when that question was put to you, you categorically stated that the company does not have a fraud policy, although fraud is specifically identified as an offense in your administrative policy manual.
Yes.
And you did indicate a draft fraud policy is before the board, to be fair to you.
Yes.
But at the material time when you had submitted it, and when this matter occurred between 2008 and 2004, when the super user had this power, we did not have at YTEPP a fraud policy. And what you did have, if I'm correct here, is a draft.
If I could address it, sir,
Yes.
we would have supplied our organizational policies, of which part of it is a fraud policy.
Yes. Yeah. Could you indicate to this committee when your draft fraud policy was approved by your board?
No, sir, not yet.
No. So you have no draft policy?
Well,
in other words, you have prepared one, you have submitted it to your board. We know that there were some problems in having the board appointed, but the board has now been appointed, and there is a board in place.
Yes, sir.
But for all material purposes, we can all agree that there is no fraud policy at YTEPP as we speak now. There's a draft that has not yet been approved by the new board. Am I correct?
Yes, there is a draft before the board, but there was a policy for fraud in our operational policies and procedures manual.
Was that approved by the board?
Previously, it was by previous boards.
A previous board.
But the draft is an update to that, which is now before the current board.
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Mr. CEO.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the documents that was submitted to this committee is titled Company Policy. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Within that document, on page 300, it reflects fraud and risk management. At the top of page 301, policy number 1701, subject fraud policy, approved by Board of Directors. This document that was sent to this committee reflects that the Board of Directors approved a fraud policy. However, I have noted that there is no information, a date of issue, or date revised. Now, this information is not consistent with what you have just shared with this committee. Could you explain, one, if there was a fraud policy previously approved, when was that fraud policy approved? Because you have given us the impression that what is before this current board. Well, I shall wait until I have your full attention, Mr. CEO.
Yes, ma'am. My apologies.
Today's contents.
It's almost to the end of the document. Almost to the back of the document. 300? 301?
Yeah, but while you're searching for this and we are waiting for your response, you should be, if you are there for 12 years,
yes, sir,
as you have claimed, you should know when this policy, as Mrs. Baptiste Primus is seeking to clarify, because you did submit a document that is completely blank as it relates to when this fraud policy was issued. And when was it approved by the board? So it is blank. So we are in the dark insofar as this fraud policy is concerned.
It's on the finance. I'm checking.
Because I'm sure you had a real board there with live human beings. And they have names.
Yeah.
And you must have minutes in the records that would show when this policy was approved.
Yes, sir.
It appears that you don't have access to that information. Is that a fact? Because for you to be searching and you cannot come up with an answer. Can I ask you to provide the following?
Yes.
We would like to get the minutes of the board meeting. The members of the board, the names of the members of the board, of course, will be in those minutes. And we'd like to see when this fraud policy was approved by the board, whenever that was. You said it was done some time ago. There was a board in existence. Please provide the secretary to our committee with the relevant information on this matter. May I ask, and the risk management policy as well, approved by the board. So both the fraud policy and the risk management policy approved by the board, when? Date. The members of the board, the minutes confirming this fraud policy. Now, could you share with us, Mr. CEO, since you have been there in the absence of a proper fraud policy, and one that you said was approved before, are there any instances recorded by your management of fraudulent activities involving the property and assets of YTEPP?
Yes, sir. There have been 2 cases I can recall.
And could you share with this committee the nature of those 2 cases and whether they required police intervention or you had to refer it to the fraud squad?
In the first instance, it was a matter where an employee was given the responsibility for the purchase of some keyboards. They were keyboards for an outdoor internet unit that we were installing in communities. The keyboard had to be tamper-proof, and the employee was given the responsibility to assist in procuring it. When the items were procured and the Director of Finance was doing his own reconciliations, we recognized that some of the invoices were altered. And as a result of that, we had to call in the fraud squad. That's the first instance. The second instance was another.
That was what year?
That would have been 2016.
2016.
2015.
2015? Okay.
2015.
2015.
Yes.
What time in 2015, may I ask? What month?
I would have to get
that in writing.
Yes, sir.
Yes, continue with the second instance.
The second
How much money was involved in this instance where you discovered the invoices being tampered?
It could have been around 25,000.
25,000?
Yes.
And could you share with us the second instance?
The second instance was when an employee had altered some delivery documents for items which the company had ordered. The items were supposed to be delivered to the warehouse, but instead it was delivered to another location. The sum in that instance was $3,450. The employee was made to repay, and before the company could take additional action, the employee resigned.
Okay. All right, there are several other questions I have for you, but I'll ask Mr. Small to come in at this time, and then I'll allow my colleagues to continue, and I will come in afterwards. Mr. Small.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Good morning again to everyone. This hearing again has started off in a way, in a direction that concerns me as I sit on this committee. Chairman, I believe that we are here. I really look at the mandate of YTEPP, and I believe that the work that YTEPP is chartered to do is important work. I believe that I look at the things that are happening in our society now, that we really need to have an entity that is able to catch the youth before they get involved in activities that are negative. So from that standpoint, Mr. Chairman, I am fully behind the objectives that YTEPP should be pursuing. However, I think the issue is not necessarily what is the how. So, Chairman, if you permit me, I have a couple of follow-up questions on the issues raised earlier, but I will leave those. I want to start with, I noted that the chairman in her introductory remarks indicated the entity has been in existence for 30 years, and they're working now on improving your monitoring and evaluation capability. Because I've noted from your draft strategic plan that one of the first things you're looking to do, objective 1, is to establish a quality management system, because the company doesn't have formal mechanisms to procedures to monitor its activities. This is of concern to me. At year 30, this is what is a number 1 issue on your strategic plan. And before I ask my question, and here's my other concern. This report, this hearing covers a period 2008 to 2014. I shudder to think what's happening in the previous years. But in that period, you're an incorporated as a company, so do you have a loss after tax accumulated of $800 million? It's not that we're expecting it to make a profit, but you have a loss after tax of $800 million. Total revenue from enrollment fees is $7.5 million. And then when you look at the data provided to us, there seems to be a challenge with the enrollment numbers. They seem to be decreasing over time. Yet the costs of running those things seem to fairly remain the same. So something is not adding up. You should be aware of the economic situation of the country. We should be trying to be as efficient as possible in using state funds. So my first question is, what is going wrong at YTEPP that you are not able to cogently demonstrate that, yes, we've received X amount of dollars from the state purse to pursue these activities. Here is our scorecard measuring how we've delivered. Because I could not find anything along that line that says, yes, we've received this money, and this is what we've delivered. And I'm not counting persons trained, because persons trained is only one element of it. Because I note somewhere in your documentation you talk about you have a placement center, and that has relatively been a failure. And it's not mentioned in your strategic plan. So I understand you take people and you train them, and then the placement center hasn't seemed to work in the way which you would like it to work. So something is wrong. Systemically, from my read of all of this information I've just presented, something is wrong. And you as the CEO have been there for 12 years. I would like to understand, what have you done to address this? You've been there for a while, and you see where we are. And on the data presented, it seems that systems are not working, and then your enrollments are collapsing. Something is going awry. Could you help us, Mr. Chairman? Mr. CEO, forgive me.
Certainly. With regard to our draft strategic plan, when we speak about our quality management system, we are speaking about improvements in the system. We have a quality management system. We have infrastructure in terms of training specialists, in terms of technical supervisors. We also have a research unit that looks after monitoring and evaluation of the organization. But where we are at now as an organization, it is about increasing the level at which we train. So we are speaking now about doing more level 2 and level 3 kind of training. And for that, we require to put in a different monitoring and evaluation system to meet the requirements of ACTT. So we've always had monitoring and evaluation, but in the strategic plan, it is in terms of where we want to go in the future and what we have to do. In terms of the statement reflecting a loss of over $800 million, as you would have said, that is the method of accounting that is done. It's called loss accounting, I believe. We receive money from the state, and that is balanced against the expenditures. So it is not where we are a profit-generating organization, but it is a way for accounting for state subventions.
Okay, Mr. CEO, and you have been there for 12 years.
Yes, sir.
And how would you describe the performance of YTEPP in terms of achieving its mandate?
Well, there are several measures that
Give us the short version.
All right. For example, in previous years, we would have had targets established by the ministry. And based on the meeting of those targets, we would have submitted a report. For the years 2013, 2014, for example, the organization was successful in meeting its targets of 86% of its targets in 2013 and 95% of its targets in 2014.
You provided that to us, to this committee?
No, I didn't, but I can provide it, sir.
Yeah, we would like to get it. Let me stop you there. I want to be deliberate. When I look at your submissions from the period 2000 to 2014, there's been a 50% reduction in enrollments.
Yes.
You've presided over that entire period.
Yes.
So that I would think that after 1 year, after 2 years, after 3 years, someone will say, hey, something is going wrong here. Let's try to see if we can arrest this. However, the decline is precipitous.
Yes.
A 50% reduction.
Yes.
While at the same time, the costs for training have remained the same, or if not, they've increased. So I am not in the mechanics of how you do that. But if you have 50% less intake, is it that you have a fixed cost for training that you just can't get away from?
No, sir. The data that you have is absolutely correct. But the information that you have, we may not have provided all the information. So, for example, when in the period 2008 to 2011, YTEPP at that time was doing 2 cycles during a year. So we had 2 6-month cycles. And that was because we were doing mostly the NEC certification. In 2011, we were advised by the ministry that we should do more CVQ type courses. NEC courses are 240 hours, CVQ courses range from 300 to 500 hours, or as long as 10 months. Therefore, the organization's intake, given the fact that we were increasing our CVQ numbers, would have accounted for that fall. There is a direct relation as well in terms of the organization's funding with regard to the number of trainees that we have in the system. YTEPP, for example, in terms of our expenditure in 2008 around 2011, our costs per trainee would have been significant because of the amount of stipends that we had to pay. Stipend payments were 30% of what our subventions were. Over the last year, we have actually implemented measures that have resulted in the reduction of our expenditure by $40.5 million between 2014 and 2017.
Okay, but I just want to say that on the numbers presented here, you have a 50% reduction in enrollment. Your training providers cost, if anything, has increased, at least under the period under review that we have in front of us here. And from where I sit, I understand what you're saying, but perhaps you can prepare something for this committee to help us understand how you had a 50% reduction in the numbers, but the training provider cost either held or had a small increase. So perhaps there may be intricacies inside of there that you can provide in writing to this committee to help us understand that.
Sure.
And before I yield the floor, Mr. Chairman, I only have a few questions today, but I want to go back to something introduced by Member Hines, who had to leave us. This internal audit report, Mr. CEO, you received this report?
Yes, sir.
And what action did you take?
In all the instances, we would have taken, I would say, appropriate action to close the majority of gaps.
Okay, because the internal audit report here is very, very significant. And perhaps because I have a little experience in this area. When an auditor says that, or suggests in very plain language, that the system has been manipulated, it doesn't say that in these words here. But here's what the quantities being advertised to the donation were not on the list. So that you have 10 items for donation, but on the list of donation you have 5. So the question is whether those items actually existed in the first place, or is it that somebody is holding back items to do other things with? That's what the internal auditor is saying. The internal auditor is very polite. He or she would not, make those adverse inferences. I have a little more leeway. Forgive me. 13 of the delivery notes prepared for items were not signed by the recipients. So you have delivery notes saying that X person received things, but nobody signed it. Half of them. So again, it's either the item actually existed or it didn't. So that if I am the CEO, it is suggesting to me there's a clear, the findings of the auditor are shocking. This required immediate action to treat this as a serious issue that is clear on the face of it, that the system of donation or whatever you all do with these items is being manipulated to suit particular purposes. There can be no other inference being drawn here. So I was surprised at your relatively bland response earlier, because I respectfully disagree. If you are sitting as a CEO and you have this 15, 19-page document, and then inside of the document, it's interesting. The people in charge of the warehousing function are disagreeing in writing with the auditor's findings. That is impossible. The internal auditor is telling them this is how you are doing it wrong, and they say, no, we are doing it right. You as a CEO should be able to say, hey, whoa, the auditor is here as a check and balance in the account, in the management system of the company. If the auditor flags something, you can, for every time, and it's interesting. I read it and I'm like, something is wrong. So, Mr. CEO, again, I'm giving you the opportunity. Did you properly read this document?
Yes, sir, I would have.
Were you mortified, shocked, anything about these results?
In some instances, they were concerning.
And what action did you take?
In terms of our system for accounting for items at the warehouse, we have actually improved the system of recording and reporting. We have brought in a consultant to assist us in terms of classifying, tagging, and also in terms of introducing barcoding for the items at the warehouse. Some of the challenges that we have with regard to the warehouse are some of the things that are there since 1988 when the organization
Mr.
started.
Sir, I want to stop you. I would ask that the actions that you've taken to deal with the findings of the auditor, could you provide that to this committee in writing?
Sure.
That's so that I'm trying to save time. Mr. Chairman, permit me just one follow-up. I have one last question in this round. This has to do with the super user. And again, I listened intently to your responses. And I know that the period would have been some time ago, but I want to understand, and this committee would like to understand, how this happened in the first place in writing. But I listened to your response. One of your responses earlier was that part of the challenge was because you had to pay OJTs, and it increased the pressure on your system. And according to what you stated earlier, it was about $5 million a month extra. Am I correct in my recollection?
It could have been more than that. 1 minute, sir. Just clarify.
I am very clear about what you said, but I just want you to just verify what you told me. I take very good notes.
Yes.
Yeah. When you spoke earlier to it on the question from Minister Hines, your response was?
Director of Finance said it's about 8 million.
8 million?
Yes.
8 million a month?
Yes.
So so your challenge is they're at $8 million a month more to pay, correct?
Yes.
Why is it then that you have a super user needing the ability to spend $10 million per day? So I accept what you're saying. It's $8 million a month. Why is it that you needed a super user to have the ability to spend or authorize? Because the super user is I understand, is somebody in the administrative system, the accountant, who can transfer money from your account to other parties' account electronically.
Yes.
We understand that. But why should that person have the authority to have move $10 million per day of taxpayers' money when the total increase in terms of what the money you're moving is $8 million a month?
Well, the 10 million would have been including YTEPP's usual stipend and salary payments. The thing is that when it says per day, it's not something that was done every day. It may have been done once during the month in order to satisfy stipend and salary commitments.
So I hear you, and I would like for you to provide to this committee in writing how this happened, so that there must have been a decision somewhere at some level in the entity that, hey, we have this responsibility, we need to, and somebody came up with this proposal for the super user, and I am sure it would have been approved at some level in the company. We would just like to understand the genesis of how this occurred, and I would pause here, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, before I ask Mrs. Jennifer Batiste to come on, Madam Chair of YTEPP, there's a strategic plan that is outstanding before your board, even though it's 6 months old. The company apparently has not been guided in its day-to-day activities on the basis of a roadmap. The plan is in a purely draft form. It is dated 2016 to 2020. Could you advise this committee when this plan will be approved so it can be operationalized?
That is an agenda item for our board meeting. We have a board meeting as early as tomorrow, and that is the first item that we are going to address.
So therefore, given circumstances and events that have been unfolding, that report might be dated, obviously, because 2016 to 2020. So maybe we need a new plan that will take into account not only the period 2018 to maybe 2021 or thereabouts, but I guess the plan would have to be updated to reflect the reality.
The
You
board
agree
will be,
with me?
yes, sir. We have decided to look at this draft and address it and adjust it accordingly.
Could you also share with us when would the Parliament be receiving the audited financial accounts, balance sheets, and other statements, financial statements from the YTEPP company for the period 2015, 2016, and 2017?
I'll ask Director of Finance.
The audited financial statements, Mr. Chairman, the audited financial statements for the period 2015 to 17 were already sent to the Ministry of Finance. We are waiting on the Ministry of Finance to schedule AGMs so that they can be presented to Parliament.
I also mentioned 2016 and 20. Are those three reports
Yes.
before the Ministry of Finance?
That's right. Yes,
and
sir.
you're just awaiting an annual general meeting to be
That's right.
scheduled?
Yes, sir.
So that you can approve
That's it.
and have it forwarded to the relevant authorities, including us?
That is correct, sir.
All right. I just want to ask the investments division here. You have heard? Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Just as an addendum to Member Senator David Small, Mr. CEO, you did indicate with regards to the processing of OJT stipends that, well, you varied it from 5 million to 8 million. My question is, how many trainees were on the program at the time that generated a stipend payroll of 8 million? If you're unable to answer that question at this point in time, I would request that that information be conveyed to this committee in writing.
I can do both, ma'am. It was about 10,000 trainees on the OJT payroll at that time, and we can also follow up with the specifics in writing.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, through you, I'd like to continue the discussion with the Chief Executive Officer because I noted Madam Chair indicated that this board is of recent vintage. And therefore, since your tenure with the board spans 12 years, we appreciate you being here to answer some of these questions. And I want, as an addendum to what the chairman stated, I looked at the draft strategic plan, 2016 to 2020. Excuse me. Before I proceed, could you explain to us conceptually what message the board is attempting to convey to its stakeholders with a picture of a cruise ship? That's the first thing you see when you open your draft strategic point plan, a cruise ship. What is the message? I was trying to determine a strategic plan. I was trying to determine what's the correlation between a cruise ship and the YTEPP company. Could you help us?
The idea behind using a vessel of that sort.
No, it's a cruise ship.
Right.
Yes.
Of using a vessel of that sort was to signify the change from the old vessel that we had to a newer vessel. It was just a matter of symbolism.
Well, may I share with you that certainly is not the message that I received when I opened it. My first intention is this boat going on a joyride. Because a cruise ship is a vessel, and I'll use your terminology, where people go to have a good time. I myself, I love to cruise. My husband and I love to cruise. So cruising, a cruise ship indicates enjoyment. May I suggest, Madam Chair, that you and your board do some surgery on this draft strategic plan, starting from this symbolism that is there. Having said that, I would like to inquire, this draft strategic plan, a very good idea, some very good plans within it. For the period 2016 to 2020, why is it still in draft? Why hasn't the previous board approved this plan?
The organization didn't have a functioning board from 2015 until this current board.
So when was this draft plan developed? Because if it says 2016 to 2020, one would want to intelligently assume that it was crafted prior to 2016.
Yes, it was crafted during 2016. The organization, again, recognizing that we had to basically steer the organization to set a new direction. We engaged in the development of a strategic plan, and we did it in the hope that we would have gotten a board at that time to approve it. It didn't make sense for us to wait until we had a board in order to do a strategic plan.
All right, and may I further inquire? The vision as outlined in this document, has it been implemented?
We have started to do that, and we started with our Institute of Cosmetology, which is a regional center of excellence that we have now. We actually have 6 students from St. Vincent and Grenadines who are participating in that program now.
So that in the absence of a board, the executive management team proceeded to implement the draft strategic plan. May I inquire whether or not the executive management team got the approval of the Ministry of Education?
No, we didn't, but that aspect of the plan was a follow-on from the previous plan with the establishment of the Woodford Lodge campus.
Mr. CEO, there is no board in place. There is the executive management team. If the executive management team is implementing any aspect of a draft strategic plan, one would assume that the executive management team is aware of the need to obtain approval from the Ministry of Education. So I would like to pause, Mr. Chairman, through you, I would like to pause and ask Ms. Leno Batiste Simmons, who is the acting permanent secretary. Is the ministry aware of what has been said here?
To your chair, yes, Mrs. Batiste, the ministry is, to the extent that the ministry would have been funding, it would have been ongoing. Most of our projects through the PSIP would be ongoing, so that the Woodford Lodges that the ministry would have been providing funds. Up to, I'm trying to remember the year, we would have provided funds for
Up until 2016.
2016. So the ministry would have been aware because it would have been part of the public sector investment program.
So the ministry is aware of the existence of the draft strategic plan?
I became, well, as PS, I became aware of it when we were receiving all of the documents. I'll be honest with you, when we received the documents earlier in the year.
So this would have been before your time also?
Yes.
All
but
right.
I knew about the Woodford Lodge because, again, it's on the public sector investment project in terms of funding for the program.
Chairman, Mr. CEO, you indicated earlier that there was, you agreed with Senator Small that there was a 50% reduction in enrollment.
Yes.
With that 50% reduction in enrollment, I was looking at your Appendix 3, organizational structure, and observed that the staffing, the staffing on the approved organizational chart is 289 persons, but the actual bodies on staff is approximately 246. Is that the correct, that correct?
Yes, ma'am. It's correct.
In 2018, 246 persons?
Yes, ma'am.
If your enrollment was reduced by 50%,
Here's one with enrollment.
shouldn't that have impacted on your workforce population?
It would have impacted on our part-time staff mostly, who are our instructors for the programs. Because we would have reduced the programs, you would have found that part-time instructors, center managers, and in some instances, technical supervisors, the requests in terms of the numbers would have been reduced. In terms of our administrative staff, when we were faced with the situation, we were told that we should try our best to operate with what we have and that we should not move or look at reducing staff numbers.
All right. In preparing your draft strategic plan, have you all engaged in any needs analysis of the company?
We are undertaking that. We are continuing to improve on that because
Have you all conducted a needs analysis of the company?
Yes, we have.
Okay, how long was that?
That would have been done in 2017.
And what was the outcome of the needs analysis?
The outcome was that there were several positions that we needed to fill, especially in the areas of senior research officer, monitoring and evaluation specialists, and a couple other areas that we felt that were critical.
Could you supply us with a copy of that report?
Yes,
the needs
sure.
analysis report.
Okay. I noted earlier your information sharing. You indicated that the Ministry of Education normally set targets for the company. And one of the targets set had or related to the CVQ courses.
Yes.
Right. Within that context, is there collaboration between YTEPP and NTA in terms of attaining synergies?
Yes, there is collaboration. There are regular meetings, and YTEPP is an approved center for conducting the CVQ as certified by the NTA.
I will pause there because I know my colleague, Dr. Dolly, would have a few questions on that. Mr. Chairman, just permit me one final area. I'm looking at your summary of audit issues 2008 to 2014. On page 1 of 5, review of employee transaction history. The comment is inadequate. And under particulars, the acts in question were of two broad types. One, failing to bring to account funds advanced to the employee. In reading this, it signaled to me to ask the question, what kind of funds are advanced to employees of the company? And in what context?
Well, this was the matter I would have mentioned earlier, where we were developing what we call public access learning systems, and we needed a particular kind of keyboard out of China, and the employee was provided with the funding in order to procure it. It was an issue that we had in terms of we didn't have a Sky. Oh, sorry. No, this is the issue. My apologies. This is the issue with the employee who would have would have received partial delivery of items at a location other than the warehouse.
So is it that the company does not give salary advances or loans to the employees?
No, we do give salary advances and loans to employees.
Could you advise this committee under what conditions do you advance salary advances to the employees and loans in particular and the authority to do so?
The company does give loans to employees, and usually it's for educational purposes, and the authority given is in our memorandum of association in terms of it giving the company the ability to advance sums not required immediately at or without interest. I will give you
I will accept responsibility for my inability to communicate properly. What I queried was the authority. Is it a board authority to grant loans to employees? If it's a board authority, when was such board authority obtained, and what is the limit? What's the ceiling, the upper and lower?
Again, that is part of our old policies. It was approved by the board, and the authority given to the board was in terms of our memorandum and articles of association. The limit place is 10,000. The loans are to be paid within, usually loans are for educational purposes, and they are to be repaid during the course of that person, the duration of the course for which the monies would have been advanced. The monies are usually paid directly to the institution and not to the employee. And usually these advances attract between 8 and 10%.
Could you provide this committee with a copy of those approvals as it relates to board policy? You said that the board approved it, and we want to get the minutes of that decision. And you talked about the company's memorandum of understanding, or that we'd like to find out from you if you can provide this committee with the relevant documentation, including the minutes of the board meeting that granted permission to YTEPP management to advance. I've never heard about it. That is unique, where you advance salaries and that you also provide loans. May I inquire through the chairman, who is the new chairman of this board? Wouldn't you agree that something like this would require the minister's approval? Because this is policy that, even though it is within the articles of incorporation, based on what we are being told, we have to examine that. Wouldn't you agree that the State Enterprises Performance Manual require approval of the Minister of Finance and Corporation sole when you're going to advance salaries to employees, one, as well as to grant them access to loans? Wouldn't you agree that that requires the Minister of Finance approval ultimately before the board can effect such measures?
Yes, sir, but I'm reading the, Yes, sir, but I'm reading the memorandum of association at Article 69 that says to lend money and negotiate loans and to invest and deal with the money of the company not immediately required upon securities and in such investments or in such manner as may from time to time be determined.
That has nothing to do with staff loans.
Okay, sir.
What you're reading there is completely different to what we are speaking about. There's no connection between what you have read and given advancement in salaries and loans to staff. They are talking about loans in terms of going outside to negotiate a loan with a bank.
No, it's just the individual.
I'm not interpreting that from the perspective. But in any event, I want to get from the investment division. I would like to get from the investment division whether that is some arrangement that is acceptable, or would it require the approval of corporation sole? Can a company on its own proceed because it has it? Well, let's assume it is in their articles of incorporation. Even if it is there, can we get from you, that is the investment division, Ministry of Finance, whether any company can proceed to, one, provide staff with advanced salaries, and two, provide staff with loans? Would that not require some intervention, some approval, some guidance from the Minister of Finance in his capacity as corporation sole with responsibility for the state enterprise called YTEPP? Can someone, Mrs. Buru, would you be kind enough for someone from that investment team guide us on this? Ms. Suku?
Presently, our manual is not very specific to having a policy. What the manual says is that the board is responsible for ensuring that the companies have all their policies in place to make sure that the business of the company is carried on in a very transparent manner. But with respect to the actual approving of the loan, that will not come to the Ministry of Finance for approval.
So the board can, the board can prepare a policy to grant salary advances to its employees, prepare a policy on advancing loans, and the Ministry of Finance Investments Division is none the wiser, and you have literally no role. That is what you're telling the country?
Well, the policy doesn't come to the Ministry of Finance for approval. What we guide you is that the board is responsible to make sure that there is an adequate policy in place to ensure that the business is conducted in a transparent manner.
But is this a practice are you aware of this practice in other state enterprises? And what is the role of the Ministry of Finance Investment Division as it relates to that kind of policy?
Okay, so in reviewing the reports that the company would send to us, if the Ministry of Finance picks up any issue to that type of activity, then we will communicate with the company to find out, well, what is the policy, and look into it at that time.
But this has been going on for years, according to the CEO. So has not the ministry been able to pick up that based on reports that have been submitted to them? The investments division?
Based on the reports that we would have been getting, I'm not aware that we
Could you
would see something.
supply this committee in writing, investment division, this matter? This is a serious matter. We would like to get from the Ministry of Finance, investment division, a statement to our secretariat as it relates to reports that would have been submitted by YTEPP to the Ministry of Finance, investments division, on this whole question about granting to their staff advances in salaries as well as loans. Please provide us with some appreciation of your policy based on the submission of reports, because you must have erected a red flag. And I'm sure that the CEO would have submitted to the Ministry of Finance the appropriate documentation as it relates to policy on salary advancement and loans. So you'll have to supply us with some responses to this particular question. May I ask the Ministry of Education, because you're responsible for this issue as well, because this is taxpayers' money, and we would like to know what is the response of the Ministry of Finance to this development. The Ministry of Education, rather. One, salary advances. Are you aware of these developments? Two, are you aware that this ministry, the company, can advise and advance loans to their staff at a simple rate of interest? What is the knowledge of the Ministry of Education on these two matters?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we would have reviewed the document and we would have raised the issue with YTEPP, and we would have written to YTEPP and asked YTEPP with respect to clarification with respect to the facility, how it operates, and under what circumstances the loans and advances will be made. And we are yet to receive the response. I think it was 2 weeks ago, we went through the documents, we would have written approximately 2 weeks ago requesting clarification on this.
And
Ministry of Education.
you are yet to receive any response?
Yes, we are yet to receive the response.
But I know that you are new to this post, but you would agree with me that based on what the CEO has said, this has been going on for several years.
Yes, we know, having read through the documents and we looked at it and we noted that they even had age receivables. We looked at it and we had some concerns from the end of the Ministry of Education, and we needed clarification, right? So some concerns were raised and we have been asking for clarification, right? For that one, the letter would have been advanced with YTEPP.
I'm CEO of YTEPP.
Oh,
you have been written to?
We have not received any correspondence.
You have not received?
We have not received any correspondence with that request.
With that request? Well, you...
I would ask the director who has direct responsibility, who would have written the letter, to respond. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. This was a matter we picked up when we got the minutes of the board meeting. We flagged it, and we have written to YTEPP for clarification as well on the authority, and we are waiting a response. If YTEPP hasn't seen it, we could send another copy, but we did send out a letter.
Listen, I will, we'll have to come back to the Investments Division and the Ministry of Education, but something appears to be a bit wrong. Something is not reading right on this matter, but we'll come back to that in a short while. I want to invite Mrs. Gladby Dolly to take off from where I'm leaving off at this time.
Thank you so much, Chairman, for the opportunity. I want to look a little bit at the core mandate of YTEPP. I'm looking at your responses with the primary responsibility of providing vocational skills training. So I just want to ask a couple of questions based on that. If I can ask someone to give me just a very brief one-liner with regards to the training program, because being around for 30 years, one might believe that everyone knows everything there is to know about YTEPP. However, you may be surprised to know, you may not be surprised to know, that there are people who will be looking at this program and wondering, what exactly does YTEPP do for trainees? So I just want a one-liner telling me, what is the training program, what does it comprise?
Good day, Mr. Chairman. The training program comprises of different elements. We have the vocational training aspect of the program, which is the core part of the program. We have the career enhancement, which gives the trainee life skills. You cannot do a program in YTEPP of vocational skills without pursuing life skills. And then we have the micro-entrepreneurship element of the program. In terms of the vocational skills, we do skills training at centers, part-time and daytime, largely using the resources of the Ministry of Education. We work in tangent together to run that aspect of the program. We have
May I just interrupt to focus?
Sure.
What is the largest complement of trainees? Where are they involved?
The largest complement of trainees are under the youth training. And the largest complement of trainees are mainly part-time persons between the ages of 16 to 35.
Okay, so that's your biggest
That's our
focus.
biggest part. We also train in communities,
Mm-hmm.
and we also have a training provider arrangement under the retraining program. We also train in the prisons of Trinidad and Tobago, YTC, men's prisons, women's prisons, and we also have an industry-based program where we work at the work site of industry where they ship, repair,
Okay.
fabricating, etc.
All right. I want to ask a question. How many tutors do you have registered with you?
It varies from cycle to cycle, but I think
How many cycles do you
presently
have per year?
We used to have 2 cycles per year because with the NEC, we were able to run it back to back. With the implementation of the CVQ, what we have some NEC courses and we have a growing amount of CVQ courses. So the CVQ
What is your
courses,
major offering?
we have about 11 occupational
In terms of
areas.
NEC and CVQ, the ratio, what is your major offering?
Our major offering is the NEC.
The NECs
Well,
at this
not
point?
Probably in youth training, but when you combine retraining and youth training, the whole of YTEPP, it is relatively, the NEC is a little larger than the CVQ.
So how long do the courses run for?
Okay, the NEC depends on how you...
Give us an average.
It's 240 contact hours, depending on where it's run, 6 to 7 months.
6 to 7 months, and the CVQ?
The CVQ varies depending on the skill. You can have a skill like welding that is 480 hours, and you can have another skill that is 300 and something hours. So it just depends on the skill.
So therefore, with that type of time, and you have 1 cycle per year?
Yes, we conduct 1 cycle per year.
1 cycle per year. So how many tutors do you have in your present cycle?
Okay, we have 419 tutors.
400 and?
That 419 part-time persons includes tutors, center managers, and technical supervisors.
Okay, so at the level of the tutor, who supervises or provides oversight for the tutors?
Okay, administratively, it's a center manager if it's at a center. If it's in a community, administratively, it's a project coordinator. But technically, you have technical supervisors that deal with the delivery that the trainee tutor has to do. So it's
And what is the ratio of your technical supervisor to your trainee, to your tutors?
Again, it depends on the skill. You can have a technical supervisor with 12 tutors. You can have a technical supervisor with 15. Sometimes you can have one with 6. It depends on the skill.
And what exactly is the role of the technical supervisor?
The role of the technical supervisor is to ensure that the program is being delivered technically sound. The technical supervisor also works with the curriculum department to develop curricula and to give us any sort of technical advice we need moving forward with courses or anything technical to do.
Are those full-time persons at YTEPP?
No, they are part-time part-time people, largely working on evenings, but some can do work during the day as well.
What informs that ratio that varies between 6 and 12 and 15?
Okay, it depends on the course areas. Course areas like, for instance, welding, culinary arts are very popular courses, so it's densely populated. So within, let's say, the East-West corridor, you may need 2 technical supervisors for welding because you have very large amount of courses. Something like agriculture, for instance, you may get less persons interested in agriculture. So while you would still want that technical person to probably have 10 to 12 tutors, you may just have 7 agricultural courses.
Is there any type of model or benchmark you're following other than simply the number of classes?
No, besides that, we have a cutoff amount. Generally, we try to work between, we try to have about 8 classes under technical supervisor.
And where's that figure coming from?
Well, we look at what the person can manage effectively, and In terms of the CVQ, we have internal verifiers, which are the same technical supervisors. So they're just called different things, but they're both technical supervision.
So what does manage effectively mean?
That you're working part-time between certain hours, that you have enough time during that period within your contract to give the proper attention to going to classes. We have, for instance, you have to go to a class at least the minimum of twice per month. A technical supervisor, a minimum of twice per month. You have a certain amount of upgrade and training to do with your tutors. So doing that balance, we were able to determine what is a reasonable amount of classes for someone to perform efficiently. Also, sometimes we have technical supervisors who might have to go to Tobago. So for in our career enhancement and micro-entrepreneurship, we have technical supervisors in Tobago, but sometimes you have to share the vocational skills with
All right, so let me segue into this issue of providing the training and professional development for the tutors. What does the technical supervisor do in that regard?
You mean day-to-day going to classes?
No. You said they have to, part of their supervisory role is to look at the upgrade of the tutors and so on and make sure the tutors are well skilled to be able to provide the courses. What exactly, in terms of professional development, is offered to tutors?
Okay. First of all, when a technical supervisor goes to classes, there's a form called, they do clinical supervision. So with the feedback we get from their clinical supervision, which is documented, they would realize where people may be falling short. So for instance, if we observe we have a few people who have problems or we don't think they're up to mark with using the knife in culinary arts, or if they have problems with class management, they would advise management. But other than that,
So hold on, let me ask this. So on a regular basis, the technical supervisors would check to ensure that the tutors are delivering at the level they should be.
Yes.
And when it is discovered that a tutor or group of tutors is not delivering at that level, what is done?
Well, we do training. We do training. We do a lot of training.
So there's tutor training?
Very much so, a lot of training.
So for this year, and this cycle is ongoing, how many sessions of tutor training have been done?
Oh, a lot. I have to find the document. I would say we did at least, I have a document here, I'm looking for it, but I would say we did at least 12 or 13 workshops for the cycle. And we don't only do
But how many
workshops-
tutors involved?
All the tutors for the pre-cycle workshops, they all have to come as a prerequisite to being placed in the program. And then the other workshops, I would say we would have trained, the amount of tutors we have, we would have trained that amount.
400 and so, something
Yes,
tutors?
they would all be
But if that training is coming out of tutors not being up to the requisite mark?
No, that's, okay, I was going to explain before. And you
Good,
asked
so
me to
what I'm focusing on really is the level of your tutors. So what I heard from you is that you trained your 400 and something tutors.
Yes.
And this is not the pre-cycle training. This is in response to technical supervisors identifying issues with a level of skill.
No.
And if that is not what you're saying, then that is what I'm asking. So could you answer that question? What happens when a technical supervisor discovers that a tutor is not up to mark? And specifically in this cycle, what has been done to address that as an example of what you do, and how many tutors have you had to do that with?
Okay, when we recognize through the technical supervisor that somebody's falling short in an area, there is mentoring and coaching that goes on. So for instance, a technical supervisor may decide to go to that particular class a little more than the other classes. We do coaching, we do mentoring, and the technical supervisors themselves, besides the big workshops we have, they may pull in tutors on a Saturday and do some training with them.
So what level of that type of remedial activity has had to take place, using this cycle as an example?
Okay, this cycle, I don't have the figures before me, but I would say we may have had about, it's hard to give a figure. I mean, I don't have access to the information right now, but I would say maybe about 15 persons we may have had to have training with. But what I'm trying to get across is that this mentoring, and it's ongoing, it's continuous. That's why the visiting classes
Well, what I'm
continuous.
trying to determine is a level of tutor ability. That's what I'm asking, and that's why I'm asking this, and what type of support and training. This, at the end of the day, we are here because the YTEPP provides a service. The question really is what type of service is being provided, and what are the structures in place to ensure that quality training is being offered. So that's why I'm asking these questions, to determine what's going on there. What is your ratio of tutors to students? And what is that based on?
We do a maximum of 18 per class and a minimum of 12 per class.
And what is that based on?
The 12 and the 18 is that's the amount of, well, for vocational skills training. 18 is the amount we think that a tutor can manage properly, ensuring that all the trainees get the benefit of what is being delivered.
Okay, is there any benchmark you're using other than what you think? That's what I'm asking.
This is a worldwide benchmark. In fact, in some cases, people say 15. When we interact with the Vancouver Island University, for instance, they recommend that we use 15.
Okay, so that's the benchmark you're using. And
Yes.
in some cases, it's a little less, some cases a little bit more.
And why it's less sometimes? Because some courses may be more specialized, and you have less persons coming for that class, but it's needed in the country. But also sometimes the lab you have could comfortably accommodate 12, so then you wouldn't push it to 18.
What kind of analysis is done with regards to the training, the results of the training and so on? What type of analysis is done every year to inform the next year's cycle?
Okay. During the cycle, the monitoring and evaluation that we do, we have persons from the curriculum department who visit classes to do clinical supervision. We have technical supervisors. We have training specialists. And based on feedback, because as I said, we use documentation, based on that feedback, we would decide what training we would do. Also, if you have certain types of incidents, because we document incidents very well, things that happen in the cycle, you may recognize that certain tutors, although they're good at their skill, they may have a class management problem or challenge, so then we would do some of that training. In addition to that, there are new methods that come up. There are changes with the NEC, there are changes with the CVQ that they let us know before changes in the curricula, etc. And so we would plan the training ahead of time so that the trainees, the tutors would be able to cope.
Your pool of technical supervisors, have they been with the organization for a long time?
You have some that have been there for a long time. You have those who have reached a certain age and have left. But we have new persons coming in and out, but most of them have been there for a while.
And what do you think that having them around for a long time, which may be good for institutional stability and that type of thing, how does that impact on new methods, new skills, new training that can be available?
Well, we do the upgrade even of the technical supervisors. So, for instance, we had a chef come in 2 cycles ago and did training with technical supervisors and tutors to upgrade their skills in industry. So we also do training for our technical supervisors.
And how do new people get into that pool of technical supervisors?
Well, we advertise on social media, we advertise in the newspaper, and people would apply. And
but are they successful in applying? If the pool you've had for a while, is it that people are not applying in areas that are needed, or is it that people apply but the same ones are still chosen?
We don't interview every cycle for new technical supervisors, if that's what you're asking.
How often do you advertise for a new pool of people? Of people that be joined to your pool?
We do that as needed. So for instance, we may part company with someone because of maybe any array of issues, then we would have to replace that person. Sometimes we put on a different course, sometimes we expand in another area, and then you need new
So if I'm
people.
understanding you correctly, you advertise only when a technical supervisor who's already in the system is not able to perform duties?
Or if you need new technical supervisors because of the expansion of the program in different areas, or etc. We don't put out ads and advertise for all our positions every cycle.
Sorry. Something like a technical supervisor position. If someone is there for one cycle, two cycles, and they are desirous of staying, what you're saying is that that position is not advertised?
No, it's not. Because we have invested in that person, we have trained that person in all the new technology, everything as it comes about, and if they are performing competently, we would bring them on for another cycle. Of course, there's a break between the cycles of training.
I want to suggest that while I understand the importance of institutional knowledge and retention, I want to suggest that that practice may be cutting people out of the opportunity to even be able to get in on that kind of service if they are not even asked to serve. So it means that if somebody is in there, they're in there almost for life as long as they want to stay. And I don't think that that is something that the company should really be encouraging. Even if it is advertised every 2 years or so, I think there must be room to give other people a chance to be able to have the opportunity to serve in these areas. And it also allows a fresh pool of people to come in, not necessarily all at the same time, but it allows freshness of ideas and so on to be able to come into the institution. In an institution that's 30 years old, you may have some people who would have been there for many, many years, and that is not something I think that, one, is good practice, industrial practice, and two, even for the quality that you get in your organization, I don't think that practice really lends to the quality that you want in an organization. I'm just saying that of the record. And then for my last chair, I know I've been here for a while, but I just want to indicate that your latest internal audit report, which is Appendix 7, has identified a number of forms and sheets that are a part of your training process that have not and are not being used. So that's your student tracking sheet on page 5, that's your quota sheet, your treatment sheet, and it also indicates that they're not being used, in some instances not being used properly, and in some cases no written guidance is available for the use of these important tracking sheets, which would help you to and speak to the quality of the training that you put out. So I want to suggest that, and I'm seeing that in some cases the management has responded saying that they have looked at it and they will implement it. This is the latest report, and after 30 years, it surprised me that there was no written guidance on some of these things. And these are the important things because they speak to the training quality, they speak to how your trainees are turned out. So I just want, as I end, to advocate, Chair, that these things are done with alacrity to ensure that the standard of the trainee, and also there's adequate guidance for the tutors that may come in, and hopefully some new tutors might get a chance, and technical supervisors in the near future to be able to be a part of the organization, and they will benefit from written procedures. Thank you, Chairman.
May I add something to that? That particular audit speaks to one project that we recently started with new processes. and the auditor worked together with that department, and a lot of clarification was given on that. So that refers not to the general program overall, but a program, an Institute of Cosmetology that we recently started with new processes that we got from Canada.
It was the pilot year.
It was the pilot project.
All right, I recognize Mr. David Small.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I want to go back to one of my earlier questions, and I want to refer to your response to a question regarding allocation of funds, how you've evaluated the use of funds for the company. Over the period under review, the cost of your operation is $754 million. In your response in terms of how did you evaluate that, you indicated 1 is tracer studies, 2 is the number of business startups per year, and 3 is the number of beneficiaries. But you put no data, you just identify the bullet points, and there's no numbers. Because the reason why we are here, this is the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. You are being entrusted with state funds to pursue a particular mandate. And your response here is not a response. You just put 3 bullets and number of business startups. That's how you measure it. But you don't say, okay, over the period 2008 to 2014, this is how we've measured per year, how many business startups per year, number of beneficiaries. You conducted tracer studies and to identify whether or not the program has achieved its objectives. And this is my concern, that money, $754 million over the period, is not a small amount. And there should be some quantifiable measure as to how this money has generated benefits to Trinidad and Tobago. And based on a response, I am not getting it. And this committee is just, and we're not saying it's not there, but you have not told us. I'm asking you, Mr. CEO, could you help us? You've been here throughout this entire period on a review. Could you help us in terms of what should really this response be? Well, I see you're struggling, Mr. Chairman.
No,
Mr. CEO.
I'm just waiting on, because we would have done.
But tell us, and you can provide details for us in writing, but tell us, $754 million would have been spent in a period 2008 to 2014. You'd have been the CEO for that entire period. And in terms of being able to say, to tell this committee, to tell the citizens who are listening, who are viewing, that YTEPP has taken this money, and yes, we've delivered value to the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago through by the achievement of 1, 2, 3. I think after 12 years, you should be able to tell us that.
Could we provide the information later?
Mr. Chairman, I will allow the CEO to, because I sense this is my struggle with my listening today. And permit me to go back, Mr. Chairman. I, as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, I'm not blessed to be working in a place where I get interest-free loans. So yes. I am not blessed as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago to be working in an entity where I can apply for a loan and get a loan without going through. I have authority and responsibility in another part of this building for a particular committee. And this is a modus of enterprise, of operation of several state entities where you earn no revenue. Well, in fact, you earn $7.5 million over the period you spent 700. So it's 1%. You've earned 1% of your expenditure or less. The ability of somebody in the company to say, listen, we are being funded completely from taxpayers' dollars. Taxpayers' dollars is being taken from the tax purse and given to us to use to achieve a mandate. If that part of that mandate involves giving loans to staff members, I respectfully disagree. It doesn't mean that it's, and I understand what is happening. People have found a way to justify it. But I think morally and ethically, somebody has to say, whoa, this is not something we should be doing with taxpayers' money. And that is my view. I have the ability to share my view. You can do as you do. What really concerns me is that the Ministry of Finance Investment Division's response was not a response that helps with understanding why this is happening. I have a huge difficulty with that, because I am sure if you ask any taxpayer on the street now, where do you work? Can you go to your employer supervisor? I need $10,000 to do a study program. Give it to me for free and no interest or manageable interest. That is not something that is available to the citizens of this country. And so so clearly the employees of YTEPP are special. I'm not against the employees. I'm against about people who are in charge of a system and a process and resources and are making decisions, taking positions without probably circling back and understanding the environment that we're in. Mr. Chairman, I have one other series of questions I want to ask, and it's along the same lines. I looked at your organizational structure document that you submitted, this Appendix 3. I looked at what you have compared here as the staff and the approved chart and the staff complement, and then you have a column called variance. I am confused because 12 of the positions on the staff that you've indicated that are on the complement are not identified in the approved chart. So you're saying that you have them on staff, they're working for you, but they're not on the approved structure. I am not sure how that is possible. And then what is even more surprising, 5 of these positions do not even exist on the structure at all. So you have a situation where you have position in structure and you're approved to have 4, but you have 5. Okay, so you needed an extra one of this person, but you didn't. It's not approved. But at least the position is approved in the structure. But out of those 12, you have 5 persons holding positions that do not exist on the structure at all. So I'm trying to understand how this could happen. Under what authority could the management, the board, whomsoever made the decision to have people in positions that are not on the approved structure? Could you help us with that?
Yeah, those positions are positions that came about because the organization felt it was necessary to do certain things. Those persons would have been persons who were already in the organization. So for example, we had a training center manager who we transferred to what we call our in-house training and development department when we recognized that the organization needed to provide training support internally. So you would see that as PITAD. It's not on the approved structure, but it's somebody who was in the organization that we repurposed to do another function because we had some surplus staff in the organization at the time. And that was one example. So
Mr. CEO, I want to stop you because I respectfully submit to you you don't have the authority to do that. I respectfully submit to you that you can't, as the CEO, sit with an approved structure, and because it's felt that you have surplus resources, that you reapply them. I respectfully submit to you that you have no such authority. Okay? Unless, of course, you get on a board and a ministry approval. I am clear about what is contained in the performance monitoring manual. I suppose you have a copy. I have an electronic copy with me. And it's very clear about anything to do with changes in the establishment requires an approval from the Ministry of Finance. It's very clear. So that I understand in your operational world, you are thinking that we have a spare resource. But if you're in an entity and every resource that is surplus to your requirements, then there's other things you could do. But you can't sit there and say, and then the whole question of what are you paying this person? What was the approval for the terms and conditions? Several things fall out of that. And I respectfully submit to you that you have no such authority because on the basis of my understanding of the Public Service Monitoring Manual, anything to do with changes in the organizational structure and, of course, any attendant issues with compensation require an approval from the Ministry of Finance. So that, I look at some of the positions that didn't exist, fish coordinator, fish technician, and project officer, for which there was no position on the structure. I don't know what you would have done for the terms and conditions for a fish technician. And I'm not demeaning the person. I'm thinking through the process that you sit as the CEO, somebody was doing a job somewhere else, and you decide, this person might be the best person to be the fish technician. How do you arrive at that? I would like a response because I want to understand, one, did you receive approval from the board? Did you seek the Ministry of Finance's approval? Did you speak to your line ministry about this? I would like to understand that.
No, we did not speak to the line ministry about those positions. Again, we felt that seeing...
You see that word you use? I want to stop you. You as a CEO can't do things because you felt it. You are the chief executive officer of a state enterprise. You are charged with using taxpayers' monies. You don't have the ability to do things because you felt it was right. You don't have that ability. You have the ability to say we have taxpayers' money and there is a process that must be followed for us to do something. So I understand what you're saying, but you keep saying that word and it rings in my ear. You have no ability as this year to do things because you felt it was right. You have the ability to say, we think we may have to repurpose an employee. Let us write to the line ministry, the permanent secretary, Madam Permanent Secretary, this is what we would like to do, and I'm sure the PS would give you a response. Okay? I'm sharing with you.
All right.
So that the chairman, I'm sure, will recommend some actions about that because this is not on. This is not on. Yeah? Mr. Chairman, I'm not completed my employee issues. Mr. Chairman, bear with me, Mr. Chairman. Because the whole issue of loans, which was dealt with, and you claimed that you have I have my own view on it. But I looked at a document you submitted, and you indicated that the loans are a maximum of $10,000. Am I correct?
Yes.
Because I see one person is owing on your submission here over $20,000. I don't want to call the person's name. This is not what this committee is about. But on page 2 of the submission that I have here, you have one employee who's currently owing $20,365. How is that? How is that? How did we get there?
We don't have the information in front of us at this point.
This is in your document, Appendix 13. This is your document.
Oh, that is Julieta with the overpayment.
Oh, that is an employee who had received an overpayment of salary. When the organization had processed back pay, the individual received an overpayment, and the company is working to recover it.
The company is working to recover an overpayment of $20,000. Over what period are you trying to recover this?
Since in 2013.
Since 2013.
And that person is still working in the company?
Yes.
And you've not been able to recover $20,000 of taxpayers' money from 2013 to 2018? That's what it, if I want to be correct with what you're telling the committee. So for 5 years, you've not been able to recover $20,000 from an employee. It was an overpayment. And I would think that you, as a good employer, there's an overpayment. You would say, listen, let's give you a few months to make up rather than take away all the person's salary. But I think 60 months is a long time. It's a long time. So we would like, through the chair, like to request a report on this because something has completely gone wrong. Completely gone awry. This is taxpayers' money. And this is something that should be in the front of your frontal lobe every day. In the environment where we're in, where the government is constrained for funds, this is taxpayers' money. So someone has received a loan effectively from the company, and you can't figure out how to collect it back. That is not on. And you, the CEO, should be in charge. And the Director of Finance is well aware. So I don't want to call persons' names because that's not what this committee is about. But we're here to understand what's really going on. I want more staff issue, Mr. Chairman. Please permit me, Chairman. Chairman, you have on your listing here a document called staff benefits. I note a quite expansive list of persons who receive transport allowances and cell phone allowances down to, I mean, again, I suppose you would claim that you have the authority to do it. But these are things that I look at and I'm saying project assistance, purchasing assistant, project drivers with cell phone allowance. I could probably even understand drivers, you need to touch the drivers. But you have an expansive list of 67 people getting transport allowances and 82 persons getting cell phone allowances. Something is awry here. 82 persons of 1/3 of your staff receive a cell phone allowance. I think in any ministry department, we have ministers of government here, they will tell you that it's nowhere near that number in their ministries. But you have a state enterprise, you're managing taxpayers' money. 1/3 of your staff, give or take a dozen or so, receive cell phone allowances. I can't fathom that 1 on every 3 persons in your staff needs a cell phone allowance. I can't see it. Similarly, transport allowance, 1/4. So that, Mr. CEO, you have been presiding over this. This has been existing, and I hope that, Madam Chair, the new chairman, would look at these. I am imploring you on behalf of this committee to look at this and sharpen the pencil. Someone has to sharpen the pencil and say, listen, this may be an abuse of a facility. That is what it suggests to me. There's no no ministry that I'm aware of that has 1/3 of its staff getting a cell allowance or a transport, or 1/4 getting a transport. And of course, there are many people get both. So you have a special case for YTEPP where staff get loans for whatever purposes, education or otherwise, and then they get all sorts of allowances, all on the backs of the taxpayer. And then when I ask, how can you demonstrate to this committee, to the members of the public who are looking at us, you spent $754 million over this period. What did you achieve in granular terms? You have to give it to me in writing. And you've been there for 12 years. So let's just say I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed and I'm concerned. And on that note, Mr. Chairman, I know we're running on time. We have another meeting today, but I will stop there. I will file my other questions in writing.
CEO of YTEPP, Chairman, Investment Division, Representatives, Ministry of Education. What we are witnessing, based on our examination and our exchanges, are quite unique, but I wouldn't say unique to the extent that it hasn't occurred in other state entities or enterprises. But what I would say is this. I think that the CEO, Madam Chair of YTEPP, your good self, should become immediately acquainted with the state performance, state enterprises, I should say, performance monitoring manual. I think that YTEPP, through its CEO and its top management, and more so from at the level of the CEO, clearly is in breach of several provisions. There is a policy on cell phones in the state enterprise performance manual. There's a policy on transport allowances. And it does not apply to staff. So if you have a quarter of your staff receiving cell phone allowances, and a third of your staff receiving transport allowances, that is not permissible under the State Performance Manual on State Enterprises. So it appears to me that YTEPP is doing its own thing and is doing it in breach of the guidelines established by the Ministry of Finance. So it seems to me, Mr. CEO, that you will have to consider rolling back a lot of things, because a lot of things are done in breach of the guidelines. I serve notice on your company and your management team that you are in breach of several provisions of the State Enterprises Performance Management Manual. The second area I'd want to bring to your attention is this. It is astonishing that you would lend people money who are members of staff. They have refused to pay back. You have refused to collect, from what I'm seeing. They are still working there, receiving monies every month, yet still they owe the company. And you have done nothing about it. You know where this is heading, Mr. CEO and Madam Chairman? To the State Limitation Act, where after a certain number of years, and you have indicated that in your submission, you are going to write off these loans. The people are not dead. They are living. They are receiving monies. They work with the company. and you are going to write off these debts. That is unacceptable, indefensible. Something is wrong at YTEPP. We are seeing in a report before us where staff receivables as at the 31st of December 2017 amount to $62,000. We are seeing where accountable advances amount to $58,687. I am wondering if these accountable advances is salaries. Mr. CEO, is this salaries? What is this accountable advances?
Mr. Chairman, these are monies that we would have given to staff members to incur expenses on behalf of the company. For instance, in the culinary arts area, it is difficult for us for the purchasing department to go and acquire culinary items because of the perishable nature. So we will in fact give staff members an advance so that when the consumables are required, they will go and purchase the items for the training classes.
Something is wrong with YTEPP, you know. I think you all have lost your, you know, I wouldn't want to say it's madness, but it seems to be bordering along that line. I get the impression, Mr. CEO and Madam Chair, that YTEPP doesn't have a proper procurement policy. And what I'm being told here, and we are being told, is that on several occasions, including the keyboard, you rely on staff, integrity and honesty and trust. You extend to purchase material. That is not done in a modern enterprise. There is a procurement policy. And you do not do these things that you are doing at YTEPP. And you know what is more serious, Madam Chair? Whilst all these shenanigans seem to be taking place, your mandate to train and retrain citizens of this country, young people who are crying out for a chance, we are seeing where every year the numbers are decreasing. So in 2016, you had 3,728 persons being trained. But by 2017, it has been reduced to 2,164. And then in 2018, it is around 2,542. So we are decreasing, in some instances, increasing by a few hundred as it relates to youth training and retraining. So we have to check ourselves. Something is wrong with YTEPP. And we have the responsibility at the Parliament to really inquire and investigate what is going on in that company. So I want to, as I said, now it's 12:23. We will decide among ourselves at the end of this meeting if we will recall you, that is the YTEPP, the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Finance. But for the time being, I'll ask the Honorable Minister Jennifer Baptiste-Primus to ask the final question in this round before we can bring proceedings to a close, because there's a sitting of the House of Representatives in a short while. Mrs. Baptiste-Primus.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chairman, I am quite sure, having sat here and occupied a bird's eye view, you must be very unsettled by now. This committee, we are very concerned. Madam Chair, you have a lot of cleaning up to do at YTEPP. You have to be courageous and be very focused. And that is all I would say on that issue. Mr. CEO, could you advise who are the officers who approve these staff loans? Who approved these loans in the company?
The process would have been the Director of Finance and myself.
And is there criteria against which these loans are granted?
The criteria would usually be where the individual has no previous loans outstanding.
No, I asked, is there a criteria that is used?
Once the loans are for educational purposes, we would usually.
So that's the only criteria that is required once it's for educational purpose?
That, and once the course of study relates to their job, and once the amounts could be paid back during the duration of the period of training. Usually the period of training is for a year.
Are these loans applicable? Are all members of staff able to access these loans?
Yes, ma'am, all members of staff.
How long has this arrangement been in place?
Probably for the last 20 years.
For the last 20 years. And you have been there for the last 12 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. CEO, your responses to this committee is very unacceptable. It is amazing that you are presiding over a company that loan to staff, grant loans to staff. You have first lien on their salaries, and you have taken absolutely no steps to recover these monies owed. That certainly does not reflect well on your management capabilities as the CEO. Madam Chair, I would strongly advise that you ensure that immediate steps are taken to ensure that those staff members who benefited by way of these staff loans, that those loans are recovered once they're still employed with the organization. Mr. Chairman, I just want to ask a question. Under Appendix 9, August 2017 audit report, through you, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask Mr. Leonard Nimblet, are you the author of this document?
Yes, I am the auditor.
Mr. Chairman, I want to seize the opportunity to commend Mr. Nimblet for the kind of courageous attempts he has made in ensuring that proper procedures are followed within the company. But it would appear that Mr. Nimblet has been literally bouncing his head against the proverbial wall. Apparently, no one is listening to him. I would like to ask, I would want to indicate on page 17 of this report, it's very worrying. The entire report, Mr. Chairman, is a worrisome report. But on page 17 of the report, what is stated here with regards to staff benefiting from items that have been deemed to be no longer salvageable. What is stated here is that without notifying staff on the whole that items remain from the donation, the release of items to certain employees continued after April 25th, 2017, thereby putting at risk fair access to donation. But what is of utmost concern is this, Mr. Chairman. 6 employees benefited from the continuation, 4 of whom worked at the very warehouse. How do you respond to that, Mr. CEO? And what have you done to implement the recommendations made by your internal auditor? I mean, if all companies had internal auditors like your internal auditor, you are supposed to be operating, within proper governance standards.
Usually when we receive the report from the internal auditor, we give it consideration and we move towards closing the gap. Since that time, what we have done is we have stopped the sale of items to staff. We have begun a process, or we continue the process of categorizing and cataloging items. And we have moved to the way of having a public auction or public sale of the items on hand.
And have you taken steps to reduce your warehousing space as recommended?
We have some items unable to be moved, and they have to be disposed of. Some of the items are from 1988, from World Bank days.
Chairman, there's so much more I recommend. We will have to call back. YTEPP.
May I bring, as I'm about to bring the proceedings to a close, Mr. CEO, there's an arresting story, I think written by a gentleman back in America, maybe a century or two ago. It's about a fellow called Rip Van Winkle. That's a chap who went in the mountains and he slept for 20 years. And all kinds of activities were taking place around him and he wasn't aware of it. It appears to me that YTEPP, like Rip Van Winkle, seem to have been sleeping. And you're still sleeping on the job. I would want to ask you, Chairman, to please awake YTEPP, because we will. We are not happy with what we are seeing, what we have been reading, what we have been digesting at YTEPP. So I serve notice that you may have to return here, but the committee will decide that. In closing, I would ask you if you'd like to make any brief, seeing that you will have to come back. At any rate, it is now 12:51. I would ask you to reserve your comments for your second round. But on behalf of the committee, I would like to thank the Investments Division. I'd like to thank officials from the ministry. And I want to tell the Ministry of Education as well, please do your job. I want to ask the Investment Division to please do your job in overseeing this organization. I want to thank you, members of the Ministry of Finance Investment Division, and also members of the Ministry of Education for being here with us. I want to thank members of the public, members of the media for following these proceedings, and we look forward to a possible resumption very shortly of this YTEPP team so that we can continue our inquiry. With these few words, I'd like to suspend these proceedings and to thank you very much for being here. I want to get our approval for a continuation.